All right, I'm going to do a brief lecture just on some additional things to keep in mind and additions you can add to your stuff or ways you can kind of customize your area. So one of the things you may have found out by now is that our cloner thing that we have set up, it works very good when we have a square building. That's how the windows work because it's perfectly square. And as it does that radial clone, it like works perfectly. But then what happens if we don't have a radial or a perfectly square building? So I'm going to duplicate one of my buildings. So here's another tall building. I'm just going to push it back over there so we can focus on that one. So let's pretend that this building is not perfectly square. Let's say that it's like that. Okay. Now, the way that I scaled that up is not the way you typically want to scale something up, because if you look at the top of this, you'll see that this area scaled differently than that area. So anytime you do something like that, you want to grab the points, you want to go to your marquee selection, and then just grab the whole thing and just scoot it over. There we go. Good. All right. And while we're at it, let me just customize this a bit more, and then make this a bit taller so it's a different height than the other one. All right, so we have this cloner for all the windows, right? So last class we went and made a window wherever that original window went. And on mine I added these bars on it, and then I added that, and I had that thing, okay? I put it in a null, and then I cloned it, and that gave us one panel. And then I cloned that, and then that gave us all four sides, okay? So what I need to do is I'm going to remove this cloner here. So if I go to Objects, I can say Delete Without Children, and what that will do is it'll delete the top object, but not the stuff underneath it. If I just hit Delete, it deletes everything. So if I just delete that, you'll see I'm left with just the one side, which is what I want. All right, so let me first set up this side. Okay, so this side is right there. I need this to be taller, so I will scoot this up. That's cool. I need to get it to the other side, so I could use a radial cloner here. Oops, that's the wrong spot. And then I could just say my count is 2. And this is radial. Oops, sorry, count is 2. And then my transform would be, that should be fine there. Oh, I just didn't pick the right plane. XZ. All right, maybe not radial. I will do linear. I will change the P amount to 0 and change the rotation here to 180. Is that going to do it? And then push it back. There we go. Oops, I rotated the wrong way. Go 180 this way. There we go. So 180 in the H direction, and then a movement in the negative X direction to get that on that side, okay? So that's another way that I could flip those onto that side. Now to get this side to work, I need to duplicate this cloner. So I hold Control, and then I just drag it above it. And so now I have inside this tall building, I have this cloner here and this cloner. So this one I'm just going to label skinny side windows, or skinny side cloner. And then this one will be wide side cloner. All right, so then on this one, I'm just going to rotate it. And if I come over here to the coordinates for it, I can type in -90 if I didn't like snap it to 90. I can move the position here. I can go back to the wide side cloner, go back to the object, change that X direction. Sometimes it'll help to go into the other view to see exactly like where it's lined up. So let me first get this one lined up. I think it's good there. And then go to the other side. And then just play with that number until it lands right on the side of that building. So I'm looking at that line. Okay, that's too much. That's too little. So somewhere in the middle, negative 45.5. That's perfect. Okay, so now I have that on each side of this. So then what I can do is go back to my original cloner for that one and then just start playing with my numbers. So make this wider here and make this wider there. Oops. I just need to center this a bit better. Go back to that, add more windows. And then try to keep a uniformity between the window spacing. So like on one side, I wouldn't want to have the windows like this, and then the other side, they're like that. That doesn't look like it makes sense. So I think 20 might be good, or 18, or even 15. Yeah, 15 looks pretty good. All right. Now the other thing you can do is if there's a special circumstance where you're like, I just want to take this one side and move it somewhere else, or I have this one item, I want to move it somewhere else, you can do what's called an instance. So if there's my tall building. So if I take anything, so if I take one of my sides of windows here, and I wanted to make a copy of it, I could go up here to this green circly one and then do what's called an instance. And what that does is it makes a copy of it, but it allows me to edit it later. So if I come back to this wide side and I start changing this, it'll start changing the other one too. Okay, so you may want to do an instance at some point. Let me show that just on a shape so it's a little bit easier to see. So if you make any kind of shape and you want a copy of it, you can hit Control, obviously, and drag it. But what happens is when I change the shape of one, the other one doesn't change shape. So if I grab this one and do an instance, move it over, now if I were to grab this one and change it, it'll change both of those. Okay? So that way I can have one item that I build, put it all over my world, and it'll automatically update anytime I do that. Okay? We can also take our window shape from the original one. So let's go here. That's my doorway. All right, so here's my window shape. So this is my tall building that I have here. And this is the window shape for it. So I'm going to turn off all my cloners and look at just the window. There it is. So on this window, I can change this window and create another copy of the window and then use that in my cloner to have like multiple versions of my window. So instead of all of my windows looking exactly the same, maybe some of them are dark, maybe some of them are lighter. Like let's say someone had the curtains drawn. So I'm just going to copy this a couple times. And let's say, for instance, instead of this being the blue window, I'm just going to change the color here to maybe like a darker blue. And then I'm going to go to the face. I'm going to click on that face where the window is, and then just drag this onto my new window. Okay. So now I have one that's completely dark, one that's completely light. And then I could also duplicate that again. And instead of this being a solid color, so like this case it's blue or dark blue, whatever it is, I can go down here to texture and I can do a gradient. And I'm sure you're familiar with gradients. It allows us to have a gradient, right? One color goes into the next. So I'll make this one, let's say a dark blue there. And then this one I can do a light blue. And then if I take cycle, no. If I take these and push these close together like this, then it'll give the appearance that maybe the curtains are like half drawn, okay? So then I can grab this window, that one, grab that face, drag this onto the window. You can see it's going the wrong direction. It's going like up and left and right. So I just go back to that gradient, and I change it from a U to a V. And now it'll go the other way. And then that's a weird spot for that to even be doing it. So let's maybe pull this. Let's go down this way. That doesn't make sense, right? That makes sense. Cool. All right, so now we have 3 different versions of my window. And now I shouldn't have to do anything special. I should be able to just turn my cloners on, and it'll randomly, well, not randomly right now, but it'll cycle through all of those. So it'll do this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, this one. So there's a pattern to it. So if I go to my clones for this window and I change it from iterate to random, then it'll actually be random. So iterate means do 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Random is just random. So now that looks a lot more interesting than just having a solid window like this, okay? And you can change the seed, which is how random it is or which random version you're getting. So I may like this one that has less versions of the darker windows and more of like the half drawn. Now here's how easy that is to change for anything else. If I go into my skinny side windows, okay, here's my null, that's my window. I just delete that null and drag these into it. And now I have the same thing, boom. And then I would have to just go to that cloner and then just say, instead of iterate, do random. And now that one looks 10 times more impressive than, you know, just having solid windows on all of them exactly the same. So work on your buildings. Like I said, you should have at least, 3 different building types, right? 5 buildings would be really good too. And then start adding some other stuff to it. So you may say, okay, well, maybe one of the buildings has a flag on it. So you can model just a flagpole with a simple little flag on top of it. Yes, sir.
I need some help extruding, and I need some help with something.
So does that mean you're not watching what I'm doing up here?
I'm looking at what you're doing.
So you're not working though, right? So if you look at the top of buildings, they have antennas, they have like weird and poles and whatever else. Yeah, so there's lots of different like little things you can add to yours. Let's say this one.
Yeah, I've already added a chimney for my first one. I'm thinking of maybe doing a flagpole and for a second one and maybe something else.
All right, that'll be good there. All right, I'm going to go to my plane. So let's say that I wanted to create a little flag here. I'm going to scale it down to roughly the size I need. And then if you remember, I showed those sculpting tools when we went through, I think, the hotkeys. So I can sculpt the flag just to give it, you know, a little bit more style to it as opposed to just being a square piece of paper. Come on, rotate. There we go. And because this is low polygon, I probably want to take my divisions down to, let's say, 10 and 10. If I, just for the purpose of seeing this, if these are not squares, so these are like that, then anytime I deform it, it'll actually come out like looking rectangular versus looking more blocky. So that has a huge role in this. So I want to basically make sure that these things are as square as I can get them. Like 8 and 10 seem like a good number. So now I'm going to hit C. I'm going to go to my Sculpt Tools. And because this is going to be drooped downward, I'm going to go to my, actually I should probably move it first and then do that. Let's do that first. So I'm going to group both of those. I'm going to move my pivot to the bottom of this pole. So I'm going to hit L. Put the pivot down there. And that just makes my life a little bit easier for positioning this and then rotating it. There we go. So that's where it's going to be on the building. Now I just need this to make it feel like it's a bit more flaggy.
Yeah, because flags usually have a bit of waviness to them or something.
Right. Well, especially there should be some drooping.
Yeah, plus with the wind.
So I'm just using the grab here. And I can just grab these points and just pull them down.
Whoa.
And if I go too far, I can hold shift and that'll help smooth it out. So I'm not too concerned with like going this far because then I can just hold shift and it'll smooth it out back to where it was. All right, so I'm just going to make this pulled a bit further. Let me make this huge, like 200, 300. There we go. Now I can go down to a smaller amount, 200. I can do a pull on this, and that will make the size bigger, 200. Take the pressure up some too. So the pressure is the strength. There we go. All right, so there's my flag. So now I can go there and grab, let's see, there's my plane. I'm going to make a little texture for it. And remember, no reflectance, no color. It's all going to come from luminance. And I can use that same gradient trick to create the texture for the flag. So I'm just going to drop this onto the flag so we can see it. That's going the wrong way, so I'll change this to a V. And then let's say I'm simulating the American flag. I will go like this, red, white, red. See, do I have? I don't have that. Or scale, yep. I think I'm going to do one here. I'm going to go like this. That. And then once I dropped it on here, I can go up to this, and then I can change how many times it's repeating. Come on. There it goes. So by changing those tiles, it changes how it's repeating.
Do you also like go into like Photoshop or something and make like a rectangle of the flag image and then bring it in as a material?
You can do that too, yeah. You would just drop it on, just like we did the pictures.
Oh, okay.
Right? Yep, so you can drop that on there too. All right, and then if I have my metal material, so I need to make sure I call this aluminum. It's just going to be silver colored, so I'll leave some reflectance on here. Like that, and then I will go to my luminance and just give this a silvery color. There we go. So that will be the pole. And then this one I did not name, so I will call this flag. And then I can just take that whole flagpole setup and then just duplicate that over. Okay, and then remember, randomly you want to check your renderer to see, you know, are the things looking good? Like maybe these colors are too bright, I need to tone them down some or whatever. You can see those windows definitely look more appealing than, again, just having solid windows here. You could also do a gradient, so I could go from like a dark blue to a light blue to help give some more of that tone to the windows. Cool. So think of little random things you could build. We'll work more on this. I'll have basically like little mini lectures about how to model little things around the city. And then also remember too that eventually we'll have a whole populated city here. So I have this cloner that clones all my buildings inside there. Short building, tall building, where's my other one? This other tall building. And then change that to random, and I don't think I like that randomness of that one. So this is how slow it's going to go once we start adding all the buildings in there. So for now, we'll just leave it like that. Blend. Yeah, that wouldn't work. Cool. All right, so I will let you guys work the rest of class on